Good morning, Robert. It's Margie. We're just waiting for a moment before we get started. Thanks for your note. Can you hear now? Great. Okay, good. Thanks, Robert. Good morning, everyone. I show 9 o'clock here, New Mexico time, and this is Margie Tatro from GridWorks, joined by my colleagues from GridWorks, Kathy Boyce and Deborah Shields. And we are so grateful that all of you are taking the time to participate in this closing meeting of the stakeholder engagement process for El Paso Electric's IRP. It's August 15th, and we are recording this meeting for the benefit of the record and for people who are not able to be with us this morning. They'll get the benefit of being able to listen to the workshop discussions. So let me go, and as you see on the first slide, and Deb will also please put into the chat the link to the GridWorks website where the recording and a summary of this meeting will be posted as soon as it's available. We'll also be posting the slide deck that you will soon see from El Paso Electric. So our objective today is to really focus on closure on the Statement of Need and Action Plan. And we will hear from EPE on changes, updates they made to those documents based on the workshop on July 24th and explain the changes that were made since then. We will also, at that point, then query the stakeholders regarding your level of agreement with those two documents. And we'll put a tickler invitation in for you to start thinking about your feedback on this full 6-month process that we've been embarking upon, as we hope to get your input in mid-September for the final report that GridWorks will deliver to the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission by October the 1st. So our agenda, here's our workshop objectives. As I mentioned, we'll hear from El Paso Electric Company and their thoughts about the Statement of Need and Action Plan based on input they heard at July 24th workshop. At that point, we will allow stakeholder questions of clarification regarding the Statement of Need and Action Plan. And we also understand that there are a few stakeholders that have some serious concerns about some things in the Statement of Need that was distributed earlier this week. And we will give some time for, I think, conversation led by Stephen Fishman to voice those comments in the spirit of giving a heads up to the utility about what issues still remain in stakeholders' mind about the Statement of Need, if any. We'll then do a stakeholder poll quickly in Zoom to see what the level of agreement is on the Statement of Need and Action Plan as presented today. And we will summarize and adjourn by 10:30. So with that, let me just remind folks, again, our workshop norms on the next slide are to continue to listen and share ideas, but leave time for others. I won't go through that in detail, but you've seen that throughout our process. And with that, let me just stop sharing at this point, Deb, and let's turn the presentation over to the El Paso Electric team to discuss a Statement of Need and Action Plan. And then we will follow that up with questions of clarification. Again, we're not here to resolve issues that may be disagreements or possible disagreements between the utility and stakeholders. We are simply here to listen to the updated Statement of Need and Action Plan content, get questions of clarification, and then, as I mentioned, we'll give Steve you the opportunity to list the bullets of things that you believe you and the team you've talked with believe still will need attention in the future. So with that, I believe Emmanuel and Dave Hawkins are on the call, and we'll turn the podium over to you all to present your update on Statement of Need and Action Plan. Please go ahead.
Margie, if I might interject for just a second, there's a little bit in the chat about some AI note takers, and just for the general group, our policy has been to not allow AI note takers because of the source, the origin has been problematic. And so we are removing AI note takers, but please do know that we are recording and it will be posted as Margie offered.
Kathy, thank you for that note. Appreciate that. All right, Dave and Emmanuel, go ahead, please.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Good morning. We really appreciate everybody taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. As always, this is going to be a collaborative effort. So Dave, Ben, and Leslie, all the other EPE subject matter experts, feel free to jump in wherever there's something or some question that someone has. And again, let's just jump right in. So this is going to be our agenda, and we understand that there are still, as Margie mentioned, some comments or concerns out there from some of the stakeholders. So if everybody's okay with it, we'll kind of run through this presentation at a pretty good speed so that we make sure we leave plenty of time to hear everyone out and have those discussions. Go to the next slide. This is our safe harbor statement. So what we're here to discuss are the feedback that we received from that in-person meeting in Las Cruces. We thought that was a really great collaborative effort. We took everything that was said in that room, we took copious amounts of notes, and we distilled that to the common areas that people wanted to see feedback. And this is what it was for the statement of need. The way the presentation is laid out is we're going to cover the statement of need and the action plan one right after the other, because we really feel that both of these sections, documents, need to be viewed as one whole, because they do feed into one another. So for the statement of need, this is the 5 main areas that we receive stakeholder feedback from. Demand side resources, that was a big one. Large load customers, our capacity gap and generation requirements, retirements, and how we would be meeting our RPS needs. Go on to the next slide. So these are the 5 mechanisms or areas that we used in order to update the statement of need based on the stakeholder feedback. So we did try to incorporate clearer links between the action plan and the statement of needs. So if you notice, we started to add references throughout the documents where one references the other, so it's easier for people to track where we're talking. We added more graphs or graphical representations of some of the tables and figures that were originally included. We felt that that would just make things a little bit clearer or help kind of get the picture across. We did quantifications of more resources and retirements. There's a pretty helpful table that you'll see in a little bit. Excuse me. We did references to the actual sections within the IRP. So this is what we did in order to meet your concerns. This slide here, you've seen this before. This is just a reminder of what was shown in the statement of need and action plan. It's all the same figures as we've gone through the past. So here, same thing. This has been presented to you in the past. We understand what our baseload forecast, what the requirements or needs are going to be under our baseload forecast, and how those increase under the different scenarios, under the increasing electrification forecast, under the increasing forecast for large load customers. But I think most importantly here on this slide is section 4, where we do understand as we're going through the modeling that the overbuilding of solar and 4-hour battery energy storage will eventually, in our opinion, become cost prohibitive. So we thought it was important within the IRP process, and we are really thankful that you all agreed with us as well, is that we needed to start to create an emphasis on the resources available to us other than supply side resources. So we did take time in this IRP to talk about demand side alternatives, DR, DER, time of use rates. We did talk about increasing our market capability by our decision to go with the Southwest Power Pool Markets Plus. We also had a couple of runs where we talked about emerging technology like long duration energy storage. So now diving into the actual updates that we did to the statement of need. So for the section in the statement of need for understanding the capacity gap, this is one of those graphs that we added that we felt would help represent the numbers that were proposed earlier. So again, this is all the same information that you've seen and we've presented on before. But we did add some references to section 9 on the determination of our resource portfolio. And then we added this graph into the write-up. And this is the one where you can see under the different baseload forecasts how our capacity need increases as it goes up. So for the section in the statement of need for generation retirements, what we did here, there was a few slight language revisions in the actual write-up. We did a breakdown of the generation retirements and decommissioning and for 2030 through 2045. So this chart we felt would be just a little easier to read so that you can see how we break down the 220 megawatts of retirements between now and 2030. Going all the way up to 999 through 2045. This one is a little bit different because I think a previous version had 996, but it was actually 999. So that's a slight revision there. Next section for the statement of need under meeting the New Mexico renewables and clean energy goals. There were, again, some revisions to the language within the section. We added this figure 2, again, to kind of depict better what was in the write-up. It is highlighted in red here because we noticed that there's nothing wrong with the data. It's just the chart is a little labeled funny. So we're going to go back and fix this label, but you should see the resources increase to meet your different baseload forecasts. It's just for whatever reason, the bar chart on the bottom didn't want to update correctly. So we'll make that change. And we had mentioned this to GridWorks at the beginning of the call. There's going to be a few typos and things like that we caught as we were going through the presentation and some in the statement of need and action plan. So we'll be sending out updated documents after we're done with the discussions today, and they're just really cleanup items.
Emmanuel, this is Ben. Do you mind if I just build on your clarification there?
No, absolutely. Please jump on in.
Can we just go back to the prior slide, please, that showed the RPS compliance? I just want to make sure what Emmanuel said is absolutely clear. So every scenario that we modeled, including the additional large load case, is RPS compliant. So if we're to look at that graph, it looks like there's a gap between RPS resources and the additional large load. What Emmanuel was referring to is those bars that you see are only for the base load forecast. The corrected version of this chart will have additional resources stacked on top of these charts or these bars that will show that the additional large load scenario is compliant with the RPS. So just wanted to make that clarification real quickly, Emmanuel.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. So next section here, the same thing. This is for how we were going to meet the need identified in the statement of need using a blend of renewables and storage. So we did a few updates to these figures there. You'll see that they're different from what was originally sent out. Same thing, we just felt that this one, it might be better presenting the information in a slightly different manner. So figure 3 here is the resource additions under the conservative base forecast. And that's for all scenarios. And Ben went through a great discussion on this the last time where this graph was represented. And you can see all the different technology types throughout the years for solar, storage, wind, DRs, DER, long duration energy storage, and gas with carbon capture. What we did for figure 4 and 5 was we felt it would be more representative. You need to read all of these together. Figures 4 and 5 are the incremental resources identified in the model on top of what's identified in figure 3. So they're not in lieu of, they're in conjunction with. So under figure 4, under the high electrification scenario for least cost plus REA, those differences in generation that are identified there go on top of what's in figure 3. So we thought that that would be a little more descriptive and helpful. So hopefully it is, but we'll wait for your questions and comments at the end. Here for the statement of need under demand side alternatives, again, as we mentioned earlier, we do recognize the importance of diversifying our resource portfolio. So these were what was added. We just added a little more context detail to the DERs and the action plan in the statement of need. This is how we did it. We talked about how we modeled 100 megawatts of CNI demand response. Our DER solution, the assumptions in the model were for 30 megawatts of an 8-hour battery, 25 megawatts of residential rooftop solar, and 350 megawatts of a demand response. We also included mandatory time of use rates within that portion of the model. Next section, as I previously mentioned, again, just an update to this section for evolving landscape and emerging technologies. Again, we understand that technology is changing and we need to look towards the future, especially on that long-term view that we take in the ISP. So the items that were modeled here were 200 megawatts of 100-hour iron air long duration energy storage. And we did 200 megawatts of carbon capture, natural gas generation with carbon capture technology. Now, moving on to the action plan section and the updates that we did to the action plan. These first 3 slides here, 1 through 4, this is the action plan as it was presented in the room on that Las Cruces in-person meeting. So these next 3 slides, there's no real difference here on what we added. It's just to show what we're going to do in the next couple of slides. Okay, so items 1 through 3, there was no change there. The first one where there's any substantive change is action plan item number 4, where the original language there states that EPE will issue an RFP for supply and demand side resources. In the room, in the stakeholder process, we got a lot of great feedback on that language. And what we heard from you all was you wanted us to be more explicit on the types of demand resources, what would be most beneficial to the system, directing bidders, potential bidders to relevant sections within the IRP so that they can have a better understanding of what we're talking about. So what you're seeing here is the revised language in the action plan where we took our original language, the stakeholder feedback, and then how we incorporated that. So the new item 4 reads that we will issue an RFP for supply and demand side resources, but we added the We're going to be more explicit on the types of resources that we're going to use for system need or that we will like to see in response to it, including the demand side resources and directing bidders to the relevant sections of the 2025 IRP. The next substantive change, or we thought was important, is item number 5. Sorry. Item number 5. So there were no revisions proposed from the stakeholders, but as we were going through this, we removed the design and so that it just reads EPE will implement one or more pilot programs. The reason we did that is if there is a DER program out there that is innovative and can help meet the needs of our growing system, we didn't want it to be limited to a program that EPE will design and implement. We just felt the language would be a broader approach, more inviting of whatever's out there in the market. The next action item that had some updates to it was 8. This one talked about the grid modernization efforts. The feedback from the stakeholders in the room was you all wanted to see that EPE implemented some sort of internal process to review cost effectiveness and viability. We thought that was a great suggestion, so we incorporated it. We tried to stick as closely as we could to the writing that we saw in the room that day. So this is how the new item 8 reads. We added that section EPE will develop an internal process to review the cost effectiveness and viability of incorporating grid enhancing technologies with the goal of incorporating them into proposed and or existing transmission and distribution resources. So again, we took all of the feedback that was in the room and we implemented it here. Item number 9, this item was actually deleted. And that's because as we were going through the action plan, we kind of addressed this one in one of the items further down the list. So what we just did is we took this one and added it to, I think what was item 12. So originally we did come to you all with a lofty goal of 13 action items. We didn't want to just remove one, so we did end up including a 13th one back in. And again, this one was not really removed, it was just condensed into a further item down the list. This one, we're going to be addressing it under the TVR PP section in the IRP report. And that area goes into more details. For action items 10 through 13, as I just mentioned, with the deletion of 9, everything else got renumbered further down the list. So no substantive change there, it's just the renumbering. So we wanted to call that out. The next slide. Item 10 here, there was discussion about the tariffs and customer protection mechanisms for large load customers. We had a really great listening session when it came to this one in that stakeholder meeting. We heard your concerns and we heard from the stakeholders and some of the large load customer representatives in the room. So we understand that everybody wants to be able to give input into this. So what was agreed to in the room with EPE and the stakeholders was that EPE will meet with stakeholders to gather information on potential large load customer connections and everything that goes along with that in advance of the filing. Again, because we're trying to incorporate as much of the customer feedback and public concerns as we can. So, you know, we listened to what you all wanted, and now we're going to be incorporating that into action item number 10. Action item 13. This is one that was not, this is the one that was not originally in the original 13, but that we added in. And again, it's a result of the conversations, the listening sessions that we had in the room. Per the IRP rule, we are required to file a progress report with the commission and the docket as like a status update on the plan. But again, since we're trying to change the way we're doing things and we're trying to incorporate more stakeholder feedback and increase those lines of communication, we felt it was important that we call it out and we take it one step further. So we're not only going to file these annual reports, but we're also going to be meeting with the stakeholders in advance of us to discuss those reports. So we call out this revised language for action item 13. EP will file annual reports no later than September 1st, 2026 and September 1st, 2027. Again, that's because September 1st is when we're filing this IRP, and then we have subsequent annual updates. And we're going to use these to demonstrate the progress of the action plan and meet with stakeholders to discuss what's going to be in the reports and get your feedback and reactions to that. So that is the end, and I'm going to catch my breath for a minute because we did try to run through that as quickly as possible again, because we wanted to give you guys as much time for feedback and addressing any questions or concerns that you have.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I'm going to take the prerogative to ask the first clarifying question. On the slide you presented that's got figures 3, 4, and 5, could you reshare that for the group, please? And could you please describe in more clarity what figure 3 represents? I'm a little confused about that. So perhaps if you start there, and then maybe we should, Leslie, you had a question first, or in addition to Emmanuel's presentation?
It's kind of in addition to, in addition to Emmanuel's presentation, and just kind of some background for where we are in the process and what EPE is required to do right now in terms of finalizing the report, and how the comments today will be helpful in helping us get that report ready for submission in just 2 weeks' time. Could I just talk a little bit about that?
So Leslie, we are going to describe what happens after you file. So at the end of this of this meeting, we'll present what happens after you file. You want to talk about between now and September 1st?
Yeah, could I just
Please.
would like to remind, so
Please.
I just, because this discussion will be helpful, but we are obligated by the rule to file on September 1st, which actually is a holiday, so we'll be filing September 2nd. And the rule establishes, it's section 9 of the IRP rule, that part of the point of the stakeholder process is to reach, quote, a potential agreement on a proposed statement of need and an action plan. And then we file our IRP. We're required in that IRP to explain all resolved and unresolved issues resulting from the process. That's why I think this discussion will be helpful, to make sure we're aware if there are still unresolved issues. But then, critically, after we file, there's an opportunity for folks to file written public comments within 30 days. And then the utility is obligated to respond to those comments within 30 days. And we have to say at that point whether we adopt any of the written comments and the reasons why or why not. So I just wanted to make that clear. I mean, we're trying to reach a potential agreement, but at this point we have less than 2 working weeks to actually finish the document. So it's kind of critical that we use this opportunity to explain, what we're proposing, what we're going to be putting in the IRP, and then hearing whether there are unresolved issues, and we'll be able to note those then in the IRP.
Great, thank you, Leslie. That's helpful.
Can I just add on to what Leslie just finished there? I want to leave it clear, this is by no means the last opportunity for stakeholder feedback. The IRP process is the beginning of this journey. We still have RFPs to issue. There's going to be rate cases and CCNs and all kinds of fun filings that are going to require stakeholder feedback. So this is just the beginning, folks. We're just getting started of you guys seeing us. So
Great, thank you.
going back to your question, Margie, I think
Yeah.
it's best answered by Ben. Ben, you want to jump in here?
Sure. So Margie, just to repeat the question was, what does figure 3 represent? Is that correct?
Correct. Correct. And then its relationship to 4 and 5. I see in the 4 and 5, those gray bars were not shown on the graphs that were sent out in the statement of need just this week. So could you explain those pieces?
Yep, absolutely. So if we look at figure 3 to start with, we ran either 11 or 12 scenarios under the base load forecast. Those scenarios were the high gas prices, the low gas prices, the demand response, the emerging technologies, all of that kind of suite of scenarios that we ran. So if you now look at this bar chart to the left in figure 3, let's take year 2035 as an example. If we start from the left in 25, we see this yellow bar that shows the solar additions. So the bottom end of that bar, which is what, about 160, 170 megawatts, is the minimum amount of solar, supply side solar, that was selected across those 11 or 12 scenarios. So if you looked at the minimum amount being built, it was that 160, 170, whatever it comes out to be. The upper end of that yellow bar is the maximum amount of supply side solar that was added across those 11 or 12 scenarios. So whatever that ends up being, 900-ish megawatts, give or take. The little black dot that you see is the average. So if you took those 11 or 12 scenarios and just did a simple average, that's where you see. So the average was just shy of 600 megawatts. So you can read that across for each of the technologies. You've got solar there, 4-hour lithium ion storage, wind, and then you come down to the C&I demand response, the DER solar, the DR storage, the long duration energy storage, and then the carbon capture CC. So you see on those instances, the top end of the bar represents the kind of the scenario that we ran. So if we look at the long duration energy storage, the top end of the bar represents 200 megawatts, which was the size of the LDES. And then the bottom end of the bar obviously hits the zero axis for the simple reason that there were scenarios that did not include long duration energy storage. We did not include an average for the alternatives to supply side resources, simply because they were modeled on a case by case basis. So if you were to do the average over 12 scenarios, but you only included it in one case, the average would look lower than it actually should be. So that's scenario 3. And we have that obviously for 5-year intervals, 2030, 35, 40, and 2045. And then if you look at figure 4 and figure 5, what you will see here is the incremental resources on top of figure 3. So regardless of what scenario that you select, whether it has supply side resources, demand side resources, a combination of the two, what additional resources are required to meet the additional load? So figure 4 shows the high electrification, high EV forecast. 2030 is a little bit funky for the simple reason in both scenarios, they added about the same amount of resources, just a slightly different mix. So if in 2040, you'll be saying under the high EV forecast, the model selected an incremental 200 megawatts of solar and an incremental 300 megawatts of battery energy storage on top of whatever solution you select for figure 3, the base case. Now, Rhonda picked up a good miss last night about 10 o'clock, which is why it wasn't probably included in the pre-materials. Those little gray bars are reallocation to New Mexico. So if you recall, starting in 2025, New Mexico represents about 20% of EPE's system. But in different scenarios, if you have high electrification, if you have additional large load growth, that ratio may change. You may end up with more load being assigned to New Mexico or less load being assigned to New Mexico, dependent upon the growth of each state. So those little gray bars at the top are basically just truing up that reallocation of existing resources. So for example, if we look at figure 4, we look in 2040, you'll see that gray bar is about 100 megawatts. What that's saying is of the existing resources that are selected in either the base case or just existing resources in service today, about 100 megawatts of that would be reallocated to New Mexico, because under the high electrification forecast, New Mexico is growing at a greater rate than Texas. So that's just kind of a true up reconciliation mechanism to make sure the numbers balance.
Thank you, Ben. Let's go now. Please raise your hand if you have a question of clarification. We'll spend about a 10 to 15 minutes on that, and then Steve, I'll turn to you for your comments regarding your group's concerns about the current statement of needs. So I see, Alan, you've got your hand up. Anastasia, I think you had your hand up first. Would you care to go first, and then we'll call on Alan?
Hi, thank you. Am I visible?
Yes.
So I have four, I hope they're quick clarifications. And the last one has to do with what Ben, the first one I'll work backwards. The first one has to do with what Ben just said about the incremental and the allocation process of existing resources. Is it EPE's intention if load were to grow vastly in Texas and not so much in New Mexico, would it end up, is the assumption here and is the plan that EPE would essentially siphon off a share of what's traditionally been allocated to New Mexico, existing resources, to serve Texas, or that it would treat the load growth, or especially the extraordinary load growth, as a separate problem for each jurisdiction to solve? And I'm not sure whether that's a question for Ben or for Emmanuel.
Well, I'll take a shot, Anastasia. Although it probably sounds better coming from Ben.
No, thank you, Dave.
I see what you're saying is I think maybe what you're referring to is as the resources sort of cost allocation of resources changes based on the load ratios between the two jurisdictions as we true up in rate cases. Is that sort of where you're going?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's more of, it's sort of more from the starting point, and it has to do with, of course, these upcoming economic development load sort of cases, is whether when you've got an extreme bump, not the usual growth, which is always varied from New Mexico and Texas, but if you've got an extreme bump, are you going to treat that as a special case that needs to be addressed, especially both in Texas and New Mexico, or are New Mexico customers facing the possibility that their share of Palo Verde and Newman and everything is going to sort of magically dissipate because there's one gorilla in the room, and that gorilla happens to be in Texas.
Yeah, I don't, and maybe the charts that you're seeing now sort of drive that question. And I know from what is practical, as I see as practical going forward, is as we go out for RFPs, there will be loads driven in either jurisdiction and resources required to meet those loads in each jurisdiction. And so there may be times when we are, as we have before, either for RPS or other reasons, selected a resource specific to a jurisdiction. I'm trying to process in my head what that means to the divvying up of existing shared resources. I don't have a probably an answer you're looking for at this point, but I think our goal is to identify new resources for those regions that are driving the load growth. Is that somewhat helpful?
I think so. It was maybe, I can't even, to be honest, I can't even see let alone understand on short notice these new figures. But the way the language Ben used sort of to me implied, oh, we're gonna, it's all gonna kind of wean the tilt over and go to whoever, particularly Texas, who has the need. Okay, so that answers the first question.
Anastasia, sorry to interrupt, but we're gonna go around the other people. Well, hold your other three questions. We'll come back to you for the next one and
Okay.
give people time.
Yeah, and the others are really quick clarifications. That was the only one that was really substance.
We'll come back to you. Let's on those three
Thanks.
clarifications. So let's go to Alan. Do you have a clarification question?
I do. I hope it's fairly quick. On the statement of need, under the demand side alternatives, there are bullet points with the quantities of the various possibilities. And on the printout that I have from the one that you published online, 12th of August, it says 325 megawatts of residential solar. And it came down to 25 in this online presentation. I'm wondering if there really was that drastic change or somewhere there's a typo.
I can go ahead and answer that one pretty quickly, Margie. So no, that's the typo. It should read 300 megawatts of 8-hour battery energy storage and 325 megawatts of residential rooftop solar. So those two are typos. They have not changed.
325 and 300 for
That's correct.
I'm sorry. There's no number 300 on either of them.
No. So, Mr. Downs, the first one under DR solution, see where it says 30 megawatts of 8-hour battery energy storage. That should read 300. There's a zero missing.
Okay. Yes.
And then
okay.
the one after, sorry, we're moving slides here. We're on the correct slide.
Okay, so it's 300, 325, 350.
That's correct.
Yes.
And
Ben, just to follow up, I think on what Mr. Downs is saying, our statement of need, the PDF document, I think only had 30 megawatts for the 8-hour battery storage as well. So we may have a typo in that PDF as well as the slide here.
Yeah, just to confirm, these scenarios, they absolutely did not change. This still represents the 25,000 homes, which is, as I just described, 300, 325, and 350.
Okay. Thank you.
Good catch, Alan. Thank you for pointing that out. Cynthia, do you have a clarification? And then we'll go to Randy and Jennifer. Cynthia, you have a question of clarification?
I do. I'm off mute now. I put my clarification in the chat, and I'll just read that. I understand that figure 3 illustrates, and this is what I want clarified, please. I understand that figure 3 illustrates some of the scenarios modeled by EP that inform the statement of need, okay? And that EP's statement of need is shown in figure 6, page 6 of the Word document that was circulated on Wednesday.
Emmanuel, can you take, or Ben, can you take response to Cynthia's clarification?
Yeah, so figure 3, just slight nitpick here, shows all of the scenarios, not just some. It's all of the scenarios under the base load forecast.
Okay.
In the range in which you see here, Cynthia, so the lower end of the bar and the upper end of the bar is then what subsequently informs the statement of need.
Right, right. And then the actual statement of need, if we can take this 10-page or so statement of need document, the statement of need boils down to, I believe, figure 6, aggregate resource additions for New Mexico. And you have resource type renewable and storage, and then you have the range there for 2030 and 2020 and 2045.
Yeah, that's correct. So Cynthia, if you were to go to figure 3 and you were to, let's just take 2035 as an example. If you were to add the bottom end of the solar graph to the bottom end of the wind graph, that would be the lower bound of renewables being added. And if you would take the upper side of each, that would be the upper bound of renewables added. And just so everyone's aware here, because I think this is an important clarification, the lower bound of those supply side resource additions generally are because of the addition of the other resources to the right. So if you add DR as an example, that drives that bound, the lower bound down. If you add DER solar, you're towards the lower end of the band. So those ranges implicitly include the demand side alternatives within them.
Okay, that's, I think, a key sticking point that's not clear. It's not explicit to me that demand resources are included in your statement of need. It appears that there's an implicit inclusion and that it needs to be, if demand resources are in this statement of need on figure 6, it needs to be explicitly called out and the range of demand resources needs to be specified. Or I don't mean to say it has to happen. I'm saying that's my interpretation of what a statement of need is. That's my understanding, my professional understanding of a statement of need.
Michelle, can somebody from the EPE team please bring up figure 6 that Cynthia is referring to help that, I think that's a good point, Cynthia. Let's look at figure 6 together so that people can see it.
It's not in the presentation. It's in the statement of need, the Word document.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're pulling that up for you all.
Great. Thank you. We'll just give you a moment to do that because Cynthia, I think you're making a point that'd be good to illustrate with the figure. I think it's a table, right?
Let me send it to you.
Well, you call it a figure and it's not really a figure.
A table.
Yeah, I call it more of a table, but whatever.
Yeah, let's look at it.
It's on page 6 and it says aggregate resource additions for New Mexico. And while we're getting to that, I just want to say EP and Ben for E3, you continue to do just incredible, marvelous work trying to push this forward and really trying to meet stakeholders, okay, on what are our interests and concerns. And so this is a huge clarifying point for us, whether or not demand resources are actually in this statement of need. And as it is, it appears that it's renewables and storage, and that's it.
Margie, I also have a table that I can quickly share that I think would be helpful once we've looked at figure 6 or table 6.
Great, thank you.
Last thing I'll say is that renewables does not include demand resources. If you go to the IRP rule and look at the definition of renewable resources, it does not include demand resources. So we can't use that as demand resources are implicitly included in renewables.
Emmanuel, do you have that available, or Kathy, maybe you can call up the document?
Yes, they're bringing up, it's page 6, figure 6.
And I gotta say also,
Cynthia, let's go ahead and let EPE answer the describe figures table 6, please.
Okay, so I have it up on the screen, and this is the red line document rather than the clean. So our page numbers are going to be different depending on whether you're looking at the clean version or the red line. So figure 6, the aggregate resource additions for New Mexico. You see what we shared in the July 24th workshop, and then the red lines are the subsequent changes that EPE has offered. So we'll repeat Cynthia's question, where is demand side resources, the commitment from EPE to an amount of demand side resources, is that captured here?
So Kathy, can I because I think that question was slightly different to the point I was trying to make. This table here that you see, which is labeled Figure 6, provides a range of supply side resources from a lower bound to an upper bound. So if we looked at storage, for example, in 2030, this table is saying EPE statement of need is between 142 megawatts and 705 megawatts of 4-hour lithium ion storage. Now, the way you get to that low end of the range, and do you mind if I just quickly share my screen? Is that okay?
Yep, of course.
Okay, let me just. All right, can you now see my screen from the last stakeholder meeting?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So what you see here are the 11 or 12 scenarios under the base load forecast. And as I was describing, these scenarios make up figure 3. And then when you go down to table 6, which provides the range, it will be either the lower bound of the solar and wind added together in the storage, for example, or the upper bound of these. So when you see a scenario that says, hey, we're going to add between 24 megawatts of solar up to 700, or what's the range here, 437 megawatts, you're looking at this scenario here, which is residential DER. So to get to that lower range, it includes, for New Mexico only, 88 megawatts of demand response, 81 megawatts of residential solar, and 75 megawatts of residential batteries. So these numbers for demand side solutions are what are forcing down the supply side builds. I don't think that's necessarily the same as EPE making a commitment to doing a certain amount of DERs. It is simply saying under the modeling, when you have DERs embedded within the scenario, it reduces the supply side requirement.
Okay, I don't want to spend more time on this because Steve Fishman also really has comments that he wants to offer for the stakeholder group that we've been working with. But I do want to say that we do need some more specificity here.
So that's, well, I mean, we can all agree that the DERs are included. I think the issue is with the way it's depicted, that it's an aggregate table rather than broken out individually. So that's just a clarification point. We can figure out a way to make that more explicit, just easier to read or understandable. But yeah.
Okay, and I have offline verbiage and comments I can share with you, Emmanuel.
Absolutely.
On that, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Let's go to Randy. I think you're next with your hand up. Randy Rankin, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this should be real quick. Figure 3 seems to be bringing lots of questions, but I recall runs for identifying the size of storage and solar and wind and demand response alternatives and throughout these meetings. Were there models run for the long duration energy storage and gas carbon capture that weren't, or that maybe I missed or in this program? And so what defines the magnitude, those 200 megawatt, it looks like in the bar charts? And as the size of the solar and wind, the two leading large bars, reduced or increased because of the size of those long duration storage and carbon capture?
Yeah, so Randy, I can take that one. If you force into the model either long duration energy storage, so 100-hour iron air storage, or you force in a combined cycle with carbon capture, you're essentially adding a almost carbon-free, I don't want to get into the specifics, but carbon-free dispatchable resource. What that does is it really drives down the amount of alternative supply side resources that you need. And we had that all on that table that I just showed. So on those two scenarios, you end up with much, much fewer solar, wind, 4-hour batteries. The problem is, based on our current cost projections, they are more expensive. So it's saying under today's cost, even though you avoid more resources, the cost of those emerging technologies are just more expensive. So the conclusion really is, hey, these potentially have a great future, but today we don't know. So when we come to issue an RFP, it should be an all source RFP in which these emerging technologies can come to the table, potentially compete, and maybe they get picked up. but definitely something to keep an eye on for the future.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So internal models were run for those two items. Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Randy and Ben. I see I've got Jennifer, Kara, and then back to Anastasia. So Jennifer, you next, and then Kara, and then we'll go back to Anastasia for your clarification questions. Go ahead,
Great.
Jennifer.
Thank you guys so much for including me. My name is Jennifer Bradbutte, and I'm working with the Borderplex Digital Assets team, which has a very large infrastructure project planned in New Mexico in the Santa Teresa area. And we submitted stakeholder comments indicating our need for growth of 1 gigawatt up to 7 gigawatts of power within the area over the next 5 years. And I'm looking at the charts and I'm seeing kind of the incremental load growth in the megawatt hour range. And I just wanted to see how you guys were kind of forecasting that in, understanding that our project will likely start out with a microgrid build.
Ben, you want to jump in here?
Sure. Jennifer, my apologies. I have not seen the comments that you submitted. I would just go back to the presentation, Michelle, if you're able to share that. And there should be a slide. I think we can use just the RPS compliance slide to partially answer this question. Slide 11, that would be. One down. Oh, okay, perfect. Stop here. So this slide doesn't completely answer your question, but if we look at this slide and we kind of ignore the RPS bit and we just concentrate on these solid lines, what you see here is EPE evaluated 3 different load forecasts. There was kind of this base load forecast that only really includes kind of native load growth and some of the most highly probable demand growth. There's this high EV forecast that included increased EV adoption. And then there's this green forecast at the top, which was this additional large load forecast. This additional large load forecast was EPE's kind of more aggressive assumption in which you see a greater adoption of large load customers. I think off the top of my head, it was maybe like an extra gig-ish in demand. But it certainly didn't go up to the kind of the high penetration that you discussed, the 7 to 9 gigawatt kind of range. So I think EPE's modeling incorporates the bottom end of your range, but not the potential high scenario. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And that's what my concern was. We did submit written comments, and then we had participants in one of the workshops, but the written comments that we did submit did include the 1 to 7 gigawatt. And that load is very realistic right now. It will be serviced by a microgrid. I think it's going to have to be serviced by a microgrid to begin with. But if EPE were later to want to acquire that microgrid infrastructure, I don't see a path forward under the forecast presented for the utility to do that.
Sorry, Jennifer, I should have clarified. You're saying gigawatt, but just to clarify, are you talking gigawatt or gigawatt hours?
Gigawatt, I believe. And I apologize. That's not electricity hours are not my strong point, but it is gigawatt, I believe.
Okay, Jennifer, I think maybe I'll suggest that EP circle back with you, because I think the high load forecast would cover, say, 7,000 gigawatt hours. Yeah, so maybe we should just take that one offline.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We've got Kara and then Anastasia and then Steve Fishman. I will turn to you after those 2 clarifications are addressed. So Kara, please go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could elaborate or explain a bit more what you describe on one of these visuals about the need for residential solar. Is that solar owned by current residents? Will it be owned by EPE? What's the proposal there?
I can go ahead and jump in. I think the slide you're looking at is the one with figure 3 on again.
It was the demand energy response. It was actually a different figure.
Okay,
Maybe
it
I
might be
had
the
2
next one
slides.
then. I'll go ahead and start answering, and then hopefully we can find the chart here. So all of the load forecasts that EP has have some level of embedded demand response, some level of residential rooftop solar embedded within the load forecast. So that's kind of just embedded within normal course of business. What we actually see here, we can see it on this figure 3, and it's kind of stated elsewhere, Cara, is the residential solar specific to this scenario, the 300 or 350 megawatts, is incremental on top of what's included in the load forecast. And this was a scenario at the behest of stakeholders. So we ran a scenario in which there was additional DER, and part of that DER included residential solar. And in terms of ownership, the model is agnostic to who owns the facility. We modeled the resource, and it could be owned by EPE, it could be owned by a third party. That kind of mechanism ownership structure is not required to kind of do the modeling.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thanks, Kara. Anastasia, I think if you have a quick clarification,
I have 3 that are really like bang, bang, bang.
Great.
First one, action plan number 13. And I think this was Emmanuel speaking. The language that you selected about the reports and speaking to shareholders, I wasn't clear whether the discussing with shareholders is going to be before or after the reports are filed.
I'll take that, Kara. It's Anastasia. It says before.
Oh,
does it? Oh
I don't
no,
know.
you're
The
right.
red
It doesn't.
language,
No.
the red language doesn't be.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're right. Sorry, I
It
misspoke.
was the intent is before.
Emmanuel, maybe you can clarify, please.
The question is, will we be discussing with stakeholders prior to filing the annual updates?
Correct.
I'm sorry, can you? I think this one is going to be, it's a little weird to answer that one because by the time we issue the annual report for 2026 and we're having that stakeholder discussion, we will be discussing what's going to happen for the next report in 2027. So for this first one, we will be an update as to what we've done so far and then what we're planning to do for the next one. So it's kind of falls on both sides. Does that make sense?
I think I understand. Thank you. On action plan change to number 4, and I don't have the language in front of me because you flipped through. And it was described as being more explicit about DR, but and this is probably goes to what we're going to talk with Steve about, but is the 2026 to 2030 period going to be addressed at all? And I'm looking at the existing language there, the revised language that the old language before the end of the sentence there targets through 2030. Are we talking specifically about the gap period here, or does this go to beyond that period?
So your question here is whether this upcoming RFP that we would issue address the years between 2026 and 2030?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm looking at what's sitting in front of us. it says you've inserted following the 2025 IRP. EPE will issue an RFP for supply side and demand side to address current capacity and resource needs to meet REI targets through 2030. And I'm wondering whether the chronology here is that you're going to do the 2025 IRP based on the 2025 of you're going to, well, are you going to go out and do an all source IRP? And let me start over again. Are you going to be doing one RFP for the period through 2030 and for the bigger picture here where we've been told all along that really you can't get anything in place until 2030? Or is it, are there going to be two RFPs or one?
So you want me to?
And I'm sorry
try
for
to-
being so
Yeah.
garbled in my speech
Yeah,
here.
so I think, indicative information that we've seen when we went out for, we went out prior to issuing the RFP, and we went out to different providers, seeking whether they would be participating in the RFP or not. We received responses that would show commercial operation dates of these resources that actually come in prior to 2030, Anastasia. And I think a lot of that is possible depending on resource types. Some may not require a lot of transmission infrastructure, say battery storage. So yes, in this RFP, I know that it's, the statement was a lot of these resources can't come into 2030. I think, yes, 2025, it's not going to happen. Probably not likely 2026 unless there's potential demand side resources available in that time frame. But the utility scale larger ones, I think potentially still could come in the, say, 2028, 2029 timeframe. Okay. Manuel, do I have that right?
Sorry. Yeah, that's correct.
And the last question goes to the generation retirements page and the updates. And I'm just wondering, would it be possible, would be helpful? Maybe it's and maybe it's going to be in the text of the report. You've got everything, all those things grouped in the 2030 to 2045 timeframe. And is it possible to either group them, either give projected date ranges for each unit or do some smaller groupings so that we're not looking at a 15-year period as opposed to what's relatively imminent?
Yeah, that's not a problem. I mean, you can see those breakouts of years within the LNR document where you can see which years those come offline. We'll think of a way to either put it in the write-up or something subsequent to this table just to kind of address that clarity question for those years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia. Let me turn to Kathy. She's pulling a couple of comments out from the chat. Kathy, would you like to go ahead before we turn to Steve Fishman?
Yes, thank you, Margie. Just to recognize some of the chat comments, Don Kurtz, I'm just going to read this verbatim. One of the explicit suggestions that came out of the day-long workshop is that an additional line be added to Figure 6 to be labeled demand resources. That change to Figure 6 would produce real and lasting clarification rather than relying on everyone's memories of spoken comments from the day. And then there's some follow-up there. Chris Hickman and Cynthia Mitchell also, again, requested that explicit line reference of what is the range of demand resources that EPE is looking for, connecting it to Figure 6. So just to recognize that there's several folks who have called for that, and I agree. I think it was something that was pretty explicit from a workshop in Las Cruces. So with that, Margie, thank you. I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thanks for sharing that with the group, Kathy. Steve Fishman, I know that you've got some prepared bulletized comments on issues that may still be present in the statement of need and action plan. I'd like to give you up to 5 minutes to share that information with the group, and then we will move to taking a poll of those who are online to understand your level of agreement with the current version of the Statement of Need and Action Plan. So Steve, would you like to please go ahead?
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So one of my biggest concerns is the capacity gap from 2025 to 2030 that's intended to be filled with purchase power. And we're looking at a time frame where there's going to be probably a shortage of supply, if you believe everything you read in the papers. And that's pretty risky. So we don't see any backup plan if market power is either not available or prohibitively expensive. And my point would be that I think it'd be a great idea to address that in the statement of need, because I think it's a huge, huge issue going forward, given the size of the potential purchases. And I want to point out that in that, potential resources could be, and backup could be delaying decommissioning. It could be customer curtailment agreements with new large customers. Those things could be laid out, and I think certainly I would like to see them, and I would like to think the commissioners probably would as well. A second comment is that I've raised this in the past. There's no T&D outlined in the statement of need. No transmission and distribution for people who don't know T&D. And that's potentially half the investment going forward. Certainly that's what's happening at many other utilities. And I just think that's a big hole in what we're looking at. I don't see that we've made much progress, even though those resources are included in the rule. And so I think we need to do a better job of defining the issues and defining the needs in terms of those investments. So to me, that's a big hole that we still need to address. Demand resources, they're mentioned, but they sort of, the way they're mentioned in the statement of need, and I'll follow up on the action plan items too, related to it, is the demand side. Their resource sources are mentioned, but it's, pretty squishy. It doesn't feel like a commitment to really find out if they work. And I know that feels a little squishy when I say that, but I think all the language clearly states that certainly storage and wind and solar are in the plan. There's nothing really definitive in the way that the demand side resources are talked about. So Don had his point that he made. The heading, I think, is really important. But I think that also should flow down to how we discuss some of the other resources. And I want to point out that if we're talking about curtailment agreements with large customers or whatever, those are not costly. They don't take a lot of time, but they can be very significant.
Steve, I'm going to ask you to wrap with your major points, maybe not elaborating on them, but describing the essence of them. It says we're going to run out of time.
Well, that's what I'm just trying to give you a quick why on each one. But I'll be brief. Finally, there's still that limitation to the degree of compliance language on the implementing the Renewable Act and meeting RFP standards. I don't think that belongs in an IRP as a strategy that a utility can make. So I'll go on from there. I'm going to go to the action plan. I have a general comment on that, which is that generally there are no dates or deadlines and not a good description of what the deliverable is. They tend to be vague. I'd like to see SMART action plans. And Don, you can tell us what SMART is. I know you remember. Specific, measurable,
Actionable with a timetable. Yep.
yeah. So dates and deliverables would be helpful on the action items as a general comment. Why are we evaluating? I'm looking at item 8. Again, we're looking at AMI and being pretty vague about what we're asking for. I think is there going to be a report? Is this commission going to know something? I don't know what the deliverable is. So it really bothered me on item 8. Item 10, that's a critical piece, and I'm glad that they've got that down for discussion. Quite frankly, I see that as a demand resource and one that's kind of a easy win. So I'd love to see us get cracking on that. Item 12, time of day tests. We need to do opt-out tests, and we don't need to do one test at a time. We need to test multiple ideas at once. So it might be several small tests. And finally, I'll just add to that I personally believe and would encourage EPE in a rate case to add a budget for those tests that they can get cost recovery on. And certainly that's something I would support to do more aggressive testing of demand side issues. And those are all my comments.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the conversation that you and some other stakeholders have had. I think the spirit of this input is offered on in the area of unresolved issues, perhaps, that Leslie referred to earlier, and bringing that to the attention of stakeholders and the utility is helpful at this point. So thank you, Steve and team, for putting that together. At this point, I'd like to go ahead and do our Zoom poll. Please stay here online. And we'd like to ask at this point, at this very time, at this day, we'd like to ask you to answer 2 questions. What is your level of agreement with the statement of need after today's presentation? And what is your level of agreement with the action plan after today's presentation? We'll ask you to score your response from 1 to 5, 1 being you are in strong disagreement, 5 being you are in strong agreement. So we will pause here and we will share the results in a few minutes so that you all can see the situation as it is currently presented to the utility following this. So Deb, thanks for launching the poll. Please go ahead and respond. EPE will ask you to refrain from answering the poll, but all stakeholders, please also go ahead and respond at this time. I'll give about 2 minutes for this. Give another few seconds. It looks like we have a good portion of respondents with 15 of you already responding. Does anybody need more time? Please speak up.
This is Steve. I'm getting the ability to answer the first question, but for some reason it doesn't give me the list of options for number 2.
Deb, can you provide some guidance, please? I think you scroll down, Steve.
I'm
Look
trying
at your
to.
poll, and then there's
Yes.
a gray bar on the right. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see the second question.
Correct.
Well, for some reason not happening on my screen. Whatever.
Okay, would you like to put your answer to the second question on the second question is regarding the
Action plan, right?
action plan? Yes, if you might put that in the chat, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Deb, let's end the poll and go ahead and share the results with the group. So can you all see on the screen the results? With it noting that we have a response in chat that will add to the statement of need, but I mean the action plan. Regarding the statement of need, it looks like we have a 35% of you who responded are in mild disagreement, plus another 6%, 1% strong disagreement. And then we have a neutral, neither disagree or agree around 3 of you, and 7 of you that are in mild or strong agreement. So we thank you very much for this response, and it'll be helpful for us to report. And we also recognize and appreciate those who have raised issues with the current version of the statement of need that you believe are unresolved.
Mary Margie, was that in the chat or is that on your screen? Because I still see the prior slide, not the results.
Let's have a look. Now can you see?
Yes.
Oh, I apologize, Leslie. Let me scroll back up then to the, here is the statement of need result in case anybody wants to have a look at that or capture that on your screen capture. Leslie, is that what you're looking for?
Yes, I got it. Thank you. Hadn't seen that before. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, let me scroll down then to share the results on the action plan. Looks like there's 7 people who are in mild disagreement, 3 people who neither disagree or agree, and 5 people that are in either mild or strong agreement with the action plan. Great, thank you for that. We appreciate your taking your temperature as we are closing out this stakeholder process. And as Leslie pointed out, the utility will certainly be attempting to address any describe unresolved issues as either before or after the filing. But please be, if you have additional specific things you want to contribute to that, we'll record those in this meeting. If you have anything else you want to put into the chat that you believe is unresolved and as a result of your voting in disagreement, please feel free to put that in the chat as we do our closing steps. Thanks, Deb. Would you please go to the next slide? We wanted to remind folks about bringing this process to a close, and the next slide shows what Leslie was describing. Here is the process of what happens next in the integrated resource plan process. On September 2nd, it sounds like the plan will be filed, and then there are 30 days for public comment. Another 30 days for the utility to respond to those, and then an initial 30 days for the PRC's utility division to file a statement regarding compliance of the statement of need and action plan with the rule. So as a result of that, really, the PRC has 120 days after the filing to determine if the statement of need and action plan are compliant or if a refiling is required. If there's been no action taken by the PRC, then the statement of need and action plan are deemed to be accepted. Then there's future activity in request for proposals if needed, and acquisition of additional resources as required. So that's the process of what happens next. In terms of our stakeholder process, the next slide shows how we will be wrapping this up. We will put a written summary and the recording of today's discussion on the GridWorks website. Also there, hopefully shortly, within a short time after this meeting closes, we will post the slides that EPE presented today, as well as, it sounds like, an updated version of the Statement of Need and Action Plan, reflecting some of the changes, the typographic errors and other errors that Manuel mentioned will be corrected in this updated version. We are also going to be asking for your feedback on the entirety of this stakeholder engagement process that we have been on together since February. As Kathy has pointed out to us, that we, together with the stakeholders, have spent over 40 hours in our meetings in these conversations. And I think there's been some extremely constructive and collaborative discussion. We recognize there are still issues that are unresolved, and that is part of the journey that we are on together going forward. So we will be asking for your input on how this process worked or did not work for you. Any suggestions you have for changing the process, or any suggestions you have that GridWorks might want to put in our report to the New Mexico PRC in terms of the effectiveness, how much impact you had, things that can be done to improve the stakeholder experience, are greatly appreciated. So we have this QR code here on the slide, which will take you to a survey asking questions on things like, did you feel you have impact? Were you heard? Were the diversity of perspectives represented, reflective of the community you think should be involved in these conversations? Did you feel there was respect in the interactions with the utility? Did you understand materials? How responsive was the facilitation team? How your priority needs were handled? And of course, any suggestions you have to improve this process. We recognize that this is the first time that EPE and its stakeholders have been through this facilitated stakeholder process, and there is great appetite for hearing input about how to improve this in the future. So we are interested, I know the commission will be interested, and I believe the utilities across New Mexico will benefit from your input about how to improve this process. With that, I would like to ask Kathy and Deb if they have any additional announcements that we need to describe before we give a final huge thank you to everybody who's been involved in this process. Kathy or Deb, anything from your end?
Nothing further from me. Thank you.
Nothing from me, Margie. Thank you.
Great. Before I offer a thanks to all the stakeholders, I wondered if Dave or Jim or Emmanuel would like to have a final comment regarding their appreciation for the stakeholder involvement.
Sure. No, this is, I don't know, the third or fourth one I've been through, and they're all unique in their own ways. And I think a lot of the participation has been very insightful. I think it's been informed. I hope we've demonstrated, maybe not to your entire satisfaction, a willingness to listen and work with you and implement some of the ideas and thoughts. And certainly through this call, I understand that there's probably a greater distance to travel in your mind to get there. But I am grateful for all those who take their time volunteering, sharing their thoughts on this. I'm incredibly grateful to the EPE team who puts in all kinds of hard work in many hours to get this done as well. And, I never expect everybody to say we got it on the day and everybody come into agreement. But I think, trying to work through the process that's fair and well understood, I think that's the ultimate goal. So, but thank you all for your participation.
Thank you, Dave. Deb, if you
and
could
thank you, Margie and GridWorks and Kathy and Debbie as well. I I would only cut you off because I don't think you'd let me back in to say that.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate that. It's been a good experience for us, and we've learned a lot. Deb, could you go back to the code that the survey Q&R code? We'll just leave this up as we're wrapping. We will also send this to you directly in email and request your response to the survey by the 12th of September. Now, we do have another quick session scheduled for September 11th. This is after the plan is filed, and it'll be the same topics that I just showed on the survey feedback. If you'd like to attend a live meeting to provide your feedback, you're welcome to do that instead of or in addition to the survey responses. We'll take your input in any form that it's convenient for you to provide it. So we will remind you of this survey code link and the URL address to reach that. We'll also monitor response, and if people need extra time, you have till the 12th of September, the day after our final feedback session, to put in input. So huge thank you. Go ahead, Leslie.
I know we're right at 12:30, but I think Jim wanted to make some comments. I think I saw him start to speak. But you may be on mute, Jim.
Jim, are you there?
Just go ahead. Okay.
So,
all right. Thank you.
Just one last thank you to everyone, all the stakeholders, everyone taking time out of your days to help us on this journey. Thank you, GridWorks. And again, this is just the beginning. So stay tuned, folks.
Great. Thank you very much. We look forward to your feedback and improving this process on behalf of all New Mexico residents, stakeholders, and utilities. Thank you and have a great day.